Sagt Avoda zara, daf samach beis amal. We're starting a new perik hamisha hasichas hapoyel. Sagt die Mishnah, hasichas hapoyel, a guy who owns yayin hires a Jewish worker, last to do malach with him with the yayin. What, like for instance, to pour it from one kli to another kli, or to bring it from one place to another. Schare, his earnings, his earnings for his work, ases asmana. But if the guy is charilas, if the guy hired him for mainly for other work, not specifically to do malacha for yayin nesach, even though he told him in the midst of the other work that he should bring the barrel of wine of Nesa from one place to another, nevertheless, Chane Muta, his earnings are Muta. So to a guy who rents a donkey Yehudi from a Yid, Lahavi Alay Yayin Nesach, he rented the horse or the donkey to put the wine on the Yayin Nesach on. It's Chad Asar. The earning of the rent is Asbana. If he rented it to do other malacha, for instance, leishallah to sit on it, even though the guy placed his picture of yayin nesach on the donkey, the schar, the earnings are mutter. In fact, one of my time, what is the right reason that the earnings of the wine that he had from the yayin nesach also is asmana? Since yayin nesach is asmana, therefore scharinami asur. Therefore, the earnings that came from the yayin nesach should be also asur, like we had in the Gemara before, from a pasuk, whatever comes out of the Isa is also asur, like the yayin nesach itself. If so, why should it be asur? The arla of the arla and klaya kerem. No, we know they're asmana. Nevertheless, we learned in the Mishnah, if the Yid sold the olive payers, which you're not allowed to have enough from, or from Klaya Keren, and in exchange he got money, and he used the money to be Mekadosh a woman, Mekadosh, the woman is Mekadosh. So you have proof that the earnings of Isuri Hana is not asmana. Because we said if a man was Mekadosh or Isha, with the money that he got from the Allah payers or from Klaya Kerem, the Yishas and Mekadeshes. I mean, you want to, Allah, rather the reason why the earnings of Yain Nesach is Asvana Hayul. Teva says, since it transfers onto the money, like if he sells the Yain Nesach, so we say the Easter of Yain Nesach transfers onto the money. But like the idol itself, meaning that it's going to be Asmana, the Tefesa says we know when somebody sells Pedish Shviyas, so the money becomes, the Kedusha of the Shviyas transfers onto the money. Like, where do we see? And nevertheless, we learned the Mishnah, one who says to his work in the year of Shemitah, take this dino, lokatli boy yerek, and gather together vegetables for me in exchange for this dinner. Hayom today, schari also. The earnings of this work is also, meaning after this manabiyah, after there's no more of that fruits for the behemoth to eat in this field, then he has to get rid of that money that he got in exchange for giving it to the owner, for gathering for the owner the fruits. So you see that it gets transferred to the money. But nevertheless, we learned if he didn't say boy as that gather here's a dinner and in exchange gather boy of it, meaning of the shvius payers in exchange for the money. What's if he didn't say boy? He said lokatli yanik, here's a dinner and just gather for me like vegetables hayom today without saying the word boy. We said the earnings are mutter. Even if there's no more payers in the field, he could keep the money, the worker, because the kedusha of shvius doesn't transfer. Because so the same thing here. We should say by the wine, by Yayin Neser, the earnings shouldn't be usher. He didn't say buy in exchange. For sure, here he didn't. He's just a worker, had nothing to do as an exchange. Versus when by Shviz, if he said buy, he literally specifically say as an exchange, then it's not going to be usher. But if he didn't say buy, we said it's mutter, the earnings are mutter. So here comes the kasha. So here he didn't say buy. Here is even less. He's doing work which he didn't tell me this in exchange of anything. For sure, the worker should be able to keep the money. It's a knas that Chachamim placed by the donkeys and by Yayin Nesach. The Yayin Nesach, or the Amorim. By Yayin Nesach, we said that the earnings of Yayin Nesach is Asvana, and the reason is because the Chachamim punished and gave a knas for the worker. And by Chamorim, what was the knas by Chamorim? It says, the time that we learned in the Braisa, Chamorim, those that lead a Chamorim, that they were doing Melacha with Peiris trees, meaning that they were bringing the Peiris on the Chamer and bringing it from one place to another. Scharan, the earnings that he made, Shvi'is, belongs to Shvi'is. Meaning it has the Kedusha of Shvi'is and he cannot have a no. What does it mean, the earnings of Shvi'is? Maybe you're going to say that the explanation is the Yavina Lahu that we give Sachmi Peiris Shvi'is, that his earnings comes from the Peiris Shvi'is itself. How could you do so? Nimsa Shazar, that the one that rented the donkeys, he's paying up the money that he owes from the Peiris Shvi'is. And the Torah says, we dashen from here, only the Peiris Shvi'is is only given to be able to eat. The Leilas Chayv, not to do business with it, and paying up the Chayv for paying up the chayv that he owes with the Peiris Shvi'is, he is a iser because he's doing schera, he's doing business with it. Where the Torah says, "Oh, it's only for consummation, only for eating." So the Gemara brings a different megachayv. Ella, only what is the different case? What is the schar of Shvi'is? The kadush scharan, that the schar, the earnings that he's mekabel, becomes holy Kedusha Shvi'is, like the Kedusha of Shvi'is. Does the earnings become like the Kedusha of Shvi'is? Latanya, we learned in the Braisa, in the previous Braisa, we said if a person says to his worker, here's a dinner, and gather yerek vegetables today, then the earnings he could keep. Only if he says, that to gather for me vegetables in exchange of the dinner that I'm giving you today, then his earnings are also. Once there's nothing in the fields, he has to give back the money. Abaye said, really the kavanah is that we give to the chamer, to the chamar, sachmi Peiris Shvi'is. We give him earnings from the Peiris of Shvi'is. And this that you had a kasha from this that Chum said, it says in the Torah that the Peiris of Shvi'is is only made to eat, not to do business. So how can he get paid from that? He says he wanted the he gives to the owner, the leader of the one that rides the chamer. He gives the Peiris in the way that it's mutter. It's not like we learned in the Mishnah. In Ma'aseh Sheni, Peri Gimel Mishnah Aleph, but again in Ma'aseh Sheni, that is, he has to bring it up to Yerushalayim and eat a b'tarim. It says, Lo yalma od l'chavei, a person shouldn't say to his chava, Hel loy Peiris halalu l'Yerushalayim l'chalik. Bring up these Peiris of Ma'aseh Sheni to Yerushalayim. L'chalik means in exchange, you will get a chelik from the Ma'aseh Sheni. That he can say. But he says, bring up these paydays in order to eat and drink, meaning I'm inviting you to eat and drink with me, be Yerushalayim in Yerushalayim. So, So then he's allowed to give him Peiros of Meiser Sheni as a matana. If he's saying in a lashon of matana, that he says you're invited to eat with us, but he's not giving it as a schar, like he says lechalik. Lechalik means as an exchange. I'm giving you the Peiros of Meiser Sheni for your work. But so then it's takasa. But if he tells him if he's inviting him to eat with him in the Peiros of Shvi of Meiser Sheni, that's giving it as a matan shalchinim. That's mutter. But Rabbi Amar, the Kabbalah of the Rice is not so. La'olam, really, the Kaddish, that the Schav, the Chamarim, is transferred b'kidushas shviyas. The kakashalach, this that is mipayel, that the worker will gather payas of shviyas, that if the earnings of the balabayas is v'lashon schidis, then the schar, the earnings, is not transferred into kedusha of shviyas. So as the Gemara Payel the Leit Nafesh Agrei, that it says that's a worker where his schar is not so much like Kansur Rabbanim. Didn't give him a knas that his earnings should be transferred into kedusha like kedusha sviyas. Chamarim the Nafesh Agrayu, but the donkey worker, where here there he's getting a big schar, big earnings. Comes to Rabbanim who did gave him a knas. Our Mishnah, why do we learn that the worker who's doing malacha with yayin nasach is just a worker where he's not making a lot of money? We said that we didn't consent the. You said we said that his earnings are asma. No, we said we didn't punish the workers because the earnings are very small. When you're talking about the severity of a yayin nasach, that's different. Even though he's earning very little, the chacham placed a knas that he shouldn't, that the earnings should be asbana. The Yeshiva had a suffix schare. If a guy hired a yid to do malacha b'stam yeinan, it wasn't it wasn't for sure yayin nesach. What's the din? Is his earnings mutbana or not? Do we say given the Yisuda, since Isa of stam yeinam is chamor ki yayin nesach, like yayin nesach, so it's asbana just like yayin nesach. Schadinami also. Then his earnings should also be aser like yayin nesach. Or perhaps should I say since the tumah of stam yeinam versus yayin nesach kil is lighter than yayin nesach, avscharinami kil. So too, the earnings should be lighter. Toshma, come in here and I'll answer you. And B'chlal, we know. Where do we see that by tumah it's light? Where do we see it's lighter by tumah? Because it says that by yayin nesach it's metame kemeis. And it's metame even by so small as the size of a gazayis. And stam yena is not metame only like mashkim, liquids that became tummy from a sheretz. And it's only if it's the amount of a revius alug, which is much bigger than a kazayis. So I would say this earnings should also be lighter. And we won't asabana his earnings. Tashma, come in here and I'll answer you. Now, there was a story with a person that he rented out his boat for wine, wine of a guy. And the guy gave him as earnings as the rental. He paid him with wheat. He came before Rav Chisda. Amalei Rav Chisda said, "Zil kalinu v'kavrinu, go and burn it and bury it." So the Gemara yes. So 1 minute. So what do we see? That even the earnings of stam yeinam is asbana from Rav Chisda. So the Gemara yes, takash on the hira of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda should have said, just scatter them. Why did he say you have to burn them? And the Gemara asked about who he was concerned that if you scatter them, people will come and have enough from them. They'll just gather it together to eat it. But the Gemara with a cleaner libadrino. It should have been enough to burn it and scatter them. Why did you have to bury them? And the Gemara dilma mezav lebehu, because when it's burned and you don't bury them, you can use it as fertilizer. So just bury them and nobody will be able to use it. Milay Tanan, have we not learned in the Braisa, Tanya, learned a Braisa? In those items that the Bezdin used for the Dalit Mises Bezdin, Echad Evan Sheniskaba, whether it was the stone that they used to kill a person to skila with the stone, and inside the tree upon which they hung this person after he got skila. If a person got killed by cherev, by that he got killed with his sword, or the kerchief upon which they used to choke him. All those items have to be buried with a mace. The reason for the kfura is because it's asmana. The reason why you have to bury those items together with the mace, because it's forbidden to have anah. So here you see that you didn't have to burn it first, and we weren't concerned that somebody will have anah. So why by the chitin that he got as an earning for the ayines, did you say he has to burn it? And if you want to hustle the kakavra b'veidina, those that are getting buried in the Beis HaKvaris, it's the Beis HaKvaris of the Harugei Bezdin. Everybody knows that it was from Harugei Bezdin, from what Bezdin killed them. So it's clear that those objects that were buried are the Harugei Bezdin. It's from what Bezdin killed them with. But over here, but again, the kfuras of chitim that was received for the chitim, the wheat that he was received for working with the stami yayin, it's not clear that we're dealing with Isa Hana. And if a person will find it, he'll say, he'll say a person stole it, and he came here and he buried it here, and another person will want to use it. That's why we have to burn it. Borrow pay from the poor. Before the Zman Abiyo, Parulu Mashminis, and then he returned the payers to these Aniyim in the 8th year. So you see, the Aniyim ate an exchange of payers after the Biur, because they exchanged the payers of Shviyas for another Pri, and nevertheless, we said that he can exchange it. They went and told this over to Rabbi Yechon to know if he did it right. Rabbi Yechon said to those that asked him, that the Rabbi Yana, the Yeshiva Rabbi Yana, they did it up 100% right, because the pace of the 7th year was already eaten, and it's not existing, and the exchange didn't exist at that time at the Zman Abiyah, so it's not a problem. Connect on similarly, Ba'esna, if earnings that a Zaina, prostitute, gets, let's say she gets a sheep for her prostitution, she is allowed to use it for a sacrifice. So Gemara asked, and it's not also on the mosaic. Why? Because the asnan is only also when she's given it at the time when she's cohabitating with this man. But here, when he lived with her, and the sheep wasn't yet in her hand, only later on she got it. So therefore it's kasher. The time that we look at law. If he gave her a shepsle and he didn't live with her yet, or he lived with her but he didn't as of yet give the tla, as muta, then that exchange that he gave for living with her is muta, because it wasn't directly as an exchange for living with her, because she didn't have it till a later time. If he gave her the Shapsala, and he didn't yet cohabit with her, Pshita said, you want to say Dava Pashit, Kivin Loi Ba'ala, since he didn't live with her. So Matan Ba'ala Hudi Yav, it's only a Stam Matan that he's giving her, and therefore she can use it as a sacrifice, and even more so. Ba'ala V'loi Nasnala, if he lived with her and he didn't give her the Asnan, Muta is Muta. He didn't give her anything. He lived with her and he didn't give her yet the clay. He didn't give her the shepsala. Since he didn't give her anything after he lived with her, Umay, what was the kavanah of Baisa? Nana muta, that the present or the clay that he gave her is muta. Of course, he didn't give it to her when he lived with her. Surely you have to say Achakama. This is what it's talking about. Nasallah, he gave it to her, and he didn't live with her immediately. Only later on he lived with her. Or he lived with her. But he didn't give it right away. And only afterwards did he give it to her. It's not a mutter of this present or exchange that he gave for living with her is mutter to sacrifice. Because since at the time of Bia, she wasn't zeicher in the Tla, in the Shapsala, so it's not chal, the dinin of the exchange for Bia, because it didn't happen at the time of Bia. We'll stop over here.